does it?
Yeah, and they're the deals where I've got my forecast wildly wrong in the past, is always where you have one champion who you think, they said they've got sign off, but when it really comes to it, they might technically have sign off, but it's going to go to the CFO. There's going to be other people who get interested. And particularly for us, so we don't sell into SaaS, we sell technology into media organizations, automotive places like that. You're never getting in without also going through a very, very diligent technical process with the IT team. Which just adds a whole new layer of detail that you need to be equipped to handle yourself as an AE to kind of maintain credibility when talking to those people, but also as an org to then bring people who know a lot more technically than me. That you might think that you can get a certain distance, and you might even be told by your champion that, I have sign off for this and it's my decision, but the politics on the other side are going to get involved. And I think, we need to be ahead of that rather than surprised when it happens. Otherwise, we're going to keep having the kind of challenges that as an industry we have in forecasting revenue.
And we've touched on like forecasting and targets and things, but in terms of sales processes, then, like, given that the opportunities are potentially bigger, more stakeholders, they're slower, they're more detailed, they're less driven by that single champion, like you said. What processes need to change then? Because I think you could argue that from business to business in SaaS, they're probably largely, on the whole, there is the same sales process, aside from, whether you're account-based or not, but the process is still largely the same, isn't it, traditionally? So, like, what processes need to change in order to help companies and reps adapt to this changing market?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's going to vary a lot company to company. And I think that's where, like, the more innovative heads of sales, VPs of sales, who can go in, not just try and impose what's worked for them in the past in a probably quite different world wherever they are now, but genuinely assess what the data is telling them about sales at the company they're at, are gonna do very well. Because I think you can't just go in now and say, I've always used Medic, it works great, that's what we're going to implement here. But I think there needs to be a bit of a reorientation away from thinking about the sales process and our sales methodology and towards understanding what is now a much less linear buyer journey, right? So our sales process is always a pretty defined thing that, from our perspective, and your job as an AE is still a little bit to try and subtly move people through the process in this way, but it was always what we call commercial validation and then technical validation, and then eventually putting a proposal in front of them. But then we'd have customers, and it would always create huge forecasting issues for us, because we'd have customers who come to us and they've been through every little detail of our documentation beforehand. And then our process is shot and we don't quite know how to deal with this. And we're still, once we've had a commercial conversation, we're still trying to push them to do that with us. Well, they don't need that. We need that, because we need to know some information. But the rigid structure of our sales process makes it very difficult to adapt, and you end up I've had in the past, like, you almost end up having to have a conversation with your champion that's like, I know, like, look, this is a process on our side, I need to just go through it. Well, that's a very, very bad buyer experience, and you're putting up obstacles. So it's a mindset shift to understand that buyers aren't going to buy in the way that we always want them to, and adapt to that rather than looking to push them to.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, from a marketing perspective, we were speaking to Laura them at Dream Data, and their Dream Data from a marketing attribution are big on sharing what the actual journey looks like nowadays for the average buyer. And to your point, it's not rigid. It's not a straight line. It might as well be a firecracker going off in a toilet. Like, it's just bouncing on every wall, like left, right, and center.